We think of a hospital as one of the safest places you can be. It's a place built on trust, on healing. But what happens when that trust is broken from the inside? Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're digging into a really chilling case file, one the staff involved started calling the hospital phantom. We're looking at a major security breach at a regional hospital up in the northeastern U.S., which all kicked off in the winter of 2022. Our source for this is an internal report, the confidential case file from the investigation. And our mission today is to really unpack how one person, someone highly skilled, was able to find and just systematically exploit the blind spots in a system designed to protect the vulnerable. And it started small, didn't it? The first signs were things administrators just brushed off, things like medication counts that were off by just a little bit, or, digital charts showing someone logged in when they weren't on schedule. And the most worrying part, a few patients, mostly elderly, whose health would suddenly just plummet with no clear medical reason why.
Exactly. And at first, they called it a stochastic error. It's a fancy way of saying random mistakes you'd expect in a hospital.
Just noise.
Just noise. But when the internal review committee finally pulled all the data together, they found something terrifying. These discrepancies. They weren't random at all. They were, and this is the word from the report, consistent. Almost mathematically precise.
So not just a few missing pills here and there.
No, not at all. We're talking about very specific, very subtle tampering events that all follow the exact same pattern. It's like a controlled experiment. And that consistency, that's what forced them to stop looking at who was working and start looking at who was watching.
And what was the key that unlocked it for them? What was the big tell?
It was the timestamp. That was the chilling detail. Almost every single one of these incidents, from the weird chart access to the medication issues, they all happened inside a very precise window.
When?
Between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m.
Wow. That 2-hour slot, that's the dead of night. Is that just about having fewer staff? Or is there something else going on then that makes the hospital so vulnerable?
It's really a perfect storm of vulnerabilities. Staffing is a huge part of it, of course. You're running on a skeleton crew.
Right.
But it's also procedural.
Yeah.
That's often when they run automated system updates or when the deep cleaning crews are making their rounds. So you might have doors propped open, maybe access controls are a little more relaxed. It's the time everyone just assumes nothing is happening because everyone's supposed to be asleep.
But the real alarm bell wasn't just the time itself.
No, it was the access logs. When they cross-referenced who was scheduled to work with the badges used at the medicine cabinets between 2 p.m. and 4 a.m., they found something that made their hair stand on end. The same exact staff badge was being used over and over again to get into secure storage. But the employee who owned that badge, they confirmed she was on vacation, thousands of miles away.
So this wasn't just a break-in. Someone had a clone or a stolen card. They were already inside the system, moving around like they belonged there during the most vulnerable hours. This wasn't a guess, it was a strategy. And that's why the staff started calling him the Phantom. It's a perfect name, right, for someone who could just appear and disappear inside the walls. And the report has this description from security footage around 2:12 a.m. one night that it stands out. The figure isn't sneaking around, they're just walking. Dressed in standard blue scrubs, surgical mask, dark hoodie pulled up.
And their face is always pointed down, away from the cameras.
Just the way they moved.
Yes. Pay attention to the movement. This is where you see the professionalism. The report says the Phantom didn't rush. They moved with, and I'm quoting here, slow confidence.
What does slow confidence even look like in a situation like that? You'd think if you're trying to not get caught, you'd be moving fast.
It's the opposite. Speed implies you're panicked, that you're reacting. Slow confidence.
Yeah.
That suggests you know exactly where the cameras are. You know there are blind spots. You know which hallways the patrols don't use. It's like muscle memory. This person wasn't reacting to the building. They were using its own design against it.
And the targets. This is the most devastating part of the file. This wasn't about stealing drugs. The victims were vulnerable, mostly elderly patients, and they all experienced these sudden, really awful declines in their health, all linked back to these tiny medication irregularities that were so easy to miss.
Right. And if you look at the method, this wasn't someone stealing to sell drugs or feed a habit. That would mean taking large amounts of opioids, things with high street value.
But that's not what happened.
No. The Phantom was making these tiny, almost undetectable adjustments. Switching saline with a little bit of a potassium derivative, making a small change to an anticoagulant dosage. Things that were, well, lethal, but hard to trace back to a specific event.
So the goal wasn't theft, it was manipulation.
It sounds more like someone testing the system's responses than trying to rob it.
Exactly. And this brings up the motive question that stumped law enforcement. Why risk it all for manipulation instead of profit? The only theory that really fits is that this was about studying failure points. What would the doctors notice? What would the lab techs miss? How quickly would the nurses react?
Which means they needed to see the results.
Which means they needed access to the patient charts to track the effects of what they were doing.
And that unauthorized chart access you mentioned, was that all digital, or were they getting into physical files too?
It was both, which just shows how adaptable this person was. They mainly used the stolen credentials to get into the electronic health records, checking vitals, looking at orders. But the report also mentioned signs of physical access paper charts that were just slightly out of place. It suggests they were cross-referencing everything, making sure the digital and paper trails matched up.
That requires such a deep knowledge of medical paperwork.
Oh, absolutely. So this goes on for months, this silent breach. And then in late 2022, it all comes to a head. A hospital's on edge. But what was the final straw? What pushed it from a mystery into a full-blown crisis?
It came down to one person, a very, very sharp night shift nurse in the ICU. She was doing a routine narcotics count, and she found something. It wasn't just a counting error. She found a vial of a powerful sedative that had been tampered with.
Tampered with how?
Its factory seal had been removed
Yeah.
and then reapplied by hand.
Wait, how is that even possible? Aren't those things designed to be tamper-proof?
They are. And that's what's so important for you to understand here. You can't just peel one of those seals off and stick it back on. The report really emphasizes this, to reapply a pharmaceutical seal so it passes a quick visual check. That takes specialized knowledge. We're talking about someone with maybe surgical training or high-level pharmacy background.
Wow.
This was not an amateur. This is the proof they needed. The Phantom was, without a doubt, a medical professional.
And that discovery, that's what triggered everything.
Instantly. This wasn't a theory anymore. It's an active threat to patients. Security was mobilized, and the hospital went into a silent lockdown. No alarms, no public announcements. They wanted the element of surprise.
So the trap is set, and at 3:03 a.m., there he is. The Phantom is on camera, heading toward the ICU, and you can see a bulge under their scrub top, something they're trying to conceal. So the guards make their move.
They do. They execute the plan. They lock the east and west wings, seal all the doors to the pharmacy floor. They were absolutely sure they had every possible exit covered.
But they didn't.
Not even close. This is where the Phantom shows just how well they knew the building. It's almost like they knew the lockdown was coming. Instead of trying for a main exit, which were all sealed, the figure just diverts.
What did they do?
They slip into a maintenance corridor, a route so obscure that the report states most of the current staff didn't even know it existed. This was a design flaw, something only an insider or maybe someone from the original construction crew would know about.
A hidden passage.
A hidden passage. It ran the whole length of the building, connecting directly to the loading dock, completely outside the security perimeter. By the time security got the doors to the corridor open, which needed special keys, the Phantom was just gone. Vanished. The only thing they left was a single dropped key card near the loading dock. And crucially, it was a generic card. It didn't trace back to any employee, past or present, just another dead end.
So this is where the real investigation kicks off. Law enforcement gets involved, and they spend months just trying to build a profile of this person. They're interviewing everyone, former employees, traveling nurses, contractors, anyone who might have had temporary access.
And even though they're chasing a ghost, the trail they uncover is, well, it's extensive. They found evidence of falsified medical credentials being used for temp jobs in the area. They tracked down online chatter about stolen or cloned hospital access cards being sold. And the purchases. Law enforcement found online buys for some very specific medical-grade equipment.
What kind of equipment? Not just like scrubs and stethoscopes.
No, nothing like that. Something way more specific. They found purchases for high-precision liquid dispensers, specialized sealants for sterile environments, chemical testing kits. These are the tools of someone planning, controlled, precise manipulation. It all just reinforced their theory.
That the intruder was a medical professional who once worked inside the system.
And knew exactly how to break it. The case file has this one line that sums it all up. The Phantom wasn't just sneaking into the hospital. The Phantom was studying it.
And the hospital itself. What was the aftermath for the community, for the staff?
The fallout was huge. The hospital spent millions upgrading everything, every lock, every camera, every single security protocol. They sealed off that maintenance corridor for good. But the psychological damage that lingers.
I can only imagine.
staff turnover on the night shift just went through the roof. And even now, years later, some people still refuse to work that 2 to 4 a.m. shift without a guard physically present in the unit. The trust was just broken.
And then there's that final unsettling detail in the report, the postscript.
Yeah. Long after the investigation went cold, staff kept reporting something. The faint sound of rubber soles squeaking on the ICU floor tiles. Footsteps. But when they checked the cameras, there's never anyone there. Just a constant chilling reminder that they never really found out who it was.
This whole case is it's a profound lesson in security, I think, for anyone listening. The main takeaway for me is that the biggest threats don't always come from brute force. It's not about smashing a window.
No, it's about intimate insider knowledge. It doesn't matter if you're managing a hospital or a data network. The Phantom knew the weakest link was that 2 a.m. to 4 a.m. window, and they knew about a piece of the building's infrastructure that the current security team had forgotten even existed. Your biggest vulnerability is often the knowledge held by people who used to be on the inside.
So the hospital upgrades everything, but the case is still open. And the investigators are convinced it was someone with professional medical training. Which leaves us with a pretty provocative thought to end on. What does it take for a trained professional, someone who took an oath to heal, to turn all of that skill, all of that intimate knowledge against the very system they promised to serve? And if they were never caught? You have to wonder if the silence just means they've moved on to study a different system, maybe one that's even more vulnerable.